This was it. The final throw of the dice for the men and women who are brave enough to take on one another, as well as the elements and whatever other obstacles the world of cross-country racing could throw at them. The Atlas Copco Gold 400 was the final round of the 2017 South African Cross Country Championship Series, and all the action is brought to you by Toyota, Ford and Total Exilium in association with the SACCS. After 5 rounds across South Africa and Botswana that included nearly 3,000 kilometers of flat-out racing on sand, mud, dirt and dust, it all came down to this, the Atlas Copco Gold 400. The Kloof Country Club at Glen Harvey in the middle of the goldfields played host to the final battle in the 2017 South African Cross Country Series War. It was a battle that would finally determine who would walk away as the respective champions of 2017. More than 30 crews and cars set up camp at the Glen Harvey Designated Service Park on the last weekend of October to tackle a rough and demanding route that snaked its way through a landscape that is dominated by mine dumps. But at the end of it all was the promise of a pot of gold for the ones that were still in a fight for championship honours. And these are the names of the guys and girls who had one last chance to gun for glory in the different categories and classes that make up South African cross-country racing. In the production car and Class FIA standings, it was Toyota Gazoo Racing's Janelle de Villiers who had already clinched the overall title thanks to an unassailable lead, but behind the multiple champion and former Dakar winner, it was still all to play for in the hotly contested Class T of the production vehicle category. The Horn brothers, Johan and Werner from Malalan, had what looked like a comfortable lead of 26 points over arch rivals Lance Woolridge and Ward Huxtable in their rapid Ford Ranger. But nothing in cross-country racing is ever comfortable. With the advantage on his side, Johan Horn knew exactly what he had to do to win the title.
Yeah, I think we just need to finish in the top 10 in the class. So yeah, we're just going to try to maintain that.
Woolridge, on the other hand, could only drive the car and hope for the best.
We're gonna do our bit, or try to do our bit, and then leave the rest up to a bit of luck, I think.
Class S saw cross-country racing stalwart Jannie Visser comfortably leading ahead of David Huddy, and youngster Richard Leek was running third. In the special vehicle category, the battle for Class A supremacy was a tight one. Evan Hutchison and navigator Donnie Stassen have won the title more times than anyone can remember, but the King Price driver had only 2 points separating himself from the husband and wife team of Marius and Yolinda Fourie, who were chasing their first ever special vehicle title. In the lead is exactly where multiple champion Hutchison wanted to be, but he knew that just 2 points was not a healthy margin.
We're going to do what we normally do, and we're going to give it a go in the time trial, but we need to win. That's what we need to do this weekend.
The farmers from Christiana, on the other hand, were happy to be the hunters. Here's Marius Fourie just before the start of the race.
Ja, nee, almal van ons wil dit wen. Dit is so, dit gaan 'n groot ding wees om dit te kan wen as ons die kans gaan kry om te doen. So, ja.
Over in Class B of the special vehicle category, it was John Telford who had a slender 4-point lead advantage over the ever-consistent Nick Gosler, with Werner Kennedy occupying the third spot, so another title was still up for grabs. So those were the standings after 5 of the 6 events that make up the 2017 South African Cross Country Series. A number of crews were gunning for championship glory, while a few others were also hoping to end the season on a high. One such driver was none other than overall production vehicle champion Giniel de Villiers, who has now already set his sights on the 2018 edition of the grueling Dakar Rally.
But obviously, we want to do some more testing on the new Dakar car. So Dirk's with me today, so just to give him some seat time as well.
With Lance Woolridge still in with a shot of winning the championship, teammates Henk Ladegan and brother Gareth Woolridge had an important role to play for the NWM Ford and Puma Lubricants team.
We need Lance to win, we need the Horns to DNF, so it's very unlikely, but anything can happen.
The Redline Motorsport and Nissan part of the service park was a busy place, as a number of Navara drivers had every intention to end 2017 on a high. Former champion Shamir Variawa returned for another outing, with Luke Berta also making the jump to Class FIA.
Historically, we've enjoyed this race and it's been good to us. We've had 1 or 2 good results here, hoping to repeat that.
Redline also provided some international flavour, with the British pairing of Thomas Bell and Patrick McMurran piloting a third Class FIA, Miss Navara. The pair reside in Dubai, and Bell was looking forward to his South African adventure.
The main thing is just enjoy it, get to the end and learn. It's all about, for me, to get some intellectual property.
Over at the 4x4 Mega World side of the service park, team principal Dion Fenter handed his Toyota Hilux to his younger son Dylan, who will now compete against brother and outgoing Class T champion Jason Fenter.
I'm a little bit heartsore because I'm out of a car, but Dylan is here and he's not much slower than Jason, so hopefully next year's going to be a great season for us.
So the battle lines were drawn in Glen Harvey. Next up, the small matter of the qualifying race of the aptly named Atlas Copco Gold 400. And speaking of Atlas Copco, not only did the team run 2 cars in the production vehicle category, one for Archie Rutherford in Class S and one for former champion Chris Visser in Class T, but the man responsible for sponsoring the event was also doing the co-driver duties inside of Visser's car. Here's Philip Hurselman on Atlas Copco's involvement.
The reason we're still involved is because we believe in this. This is it's synonymous with what we represent, to be first in mind, first in choice. If you look at the technology here, if you look at the professionalism, it's very much the same way as Atlas Copco product is portrayed, to be first in mind, first in choice.
The lights were about to turn green to signal the start of the qualifying race of the Atlas Copco Gold 400. The 46-kilometre route, mostly to the south of Glen Harvey, had it all. Mud, dust, a river crossing or two, but mostly rocks, just waiting to puncture a tyre that is not placed perfectly in the middle of the road. There was simply no room for error. So join us after the break for the qualifying action.
When it comes to sustainability, we cannot ignore electric cars. On them rests the hope to have emission-free mobility in the future. The charging infrastructure in many countries still leaves a lot to be desired, but instead of talking about drawbacks, some manufacturers meet the challenges with innovative products.
Welcome back to the Atlas Copco Gold 400, the final round of the 2017 South African Cross Country Championship Series, where the all-important qualifying race was about to start. Qualifying may have been only 46 kilometers in distance, so the overall race could certainly not be won in the quali, but it could be lost. At 2 p.m. on the Friday afternoon, and with gloves and helmets on, safety belts tightened, it was time to drop the hammer for the last qualifying race of 2017. Let's see how the action panned out in the production category first. The crews in Class FIA were the first ones to tackle the qualifying route, which also meant that they were the first ones to try and find their way on virgin territory. This quickly proved to be a problem for Toyota Gazoo SA's Janelle de Villiers and German co-driver Dirk van Zietewitz, who got lost within minutes of leaving the start. After losing valuable time, the pair then found their way back on track only for the right front disc brake to fail a few kilometers later. So not a good qualifying run for the SA champion, who completed the loop with only the third fastest time of the FIA vehicles.
We're just trying some new brake pads, which obviously don't work. So we lost one brake disc, and I just had to be, basically just drive it in carefully from there. So obviously lost a bit of time, and we're going to be in the dust tomorrow.
It helped that most of the other cars in Class FIA also ran into trouble, as it took the Renault Duster of Johan van Staden and Mike Lawrenson an additional 2 full minutes to complete the qualifying race. And yet it could have been worse, as Dubai citizens Thomas Bell and Patrick McMurran were about to find out. The Redline Motorsport crew encountered some of the local wildlife en route and nearly drowned the Redline Motorsport Nissan Navara after a little miscommunication that set them down the river. They somehow managed to keep the Nissan running and reached the end of qualifying. Not so lucky were Redline teammates Shamir Variawa and Zahir Bodania. The former champion was on course to set a very competitive time when they lost fuel pressure and subsequently got stuck in a ditch. And that with the finish line almost in sight. It wasn't all doom and gloom for the Nissans, as Luke Berta and André Vermeulen had a clean run and steered their Nissan Navara to a second place finish in Class FIA. But the men who topped the FIA standings were none other than Mark Corbett and Rodney Burke in their newly built FIA buggy. The Buckies in the hotly contested Class T were next to tackle the qualifying race. Remember, this is where the next South African champion would come from, so all eyes were on the tight battle between the Horn brothers of Johan and Werner from Malalan Toyota and the Ford NWM Puma Lubricants Ranger of Lance Woolridge and Ward Huxtable. The Horns didn't have to take any risks to win their championship, but even so, they drew first blood by taking the overall qualifying race victory, nearly a full minute ahead of their title rivals, Woolridge and Huxtable.
I don't know, we're also surprised by the time. We thought we took it smooth and safe, but yeah, apparently the times are good.
The Ford NWM Puma Lubricants Rangers featured prominently in qualifying, with Henk Ladekan and Barry White setting the third fastest time, ahead of teammates Gareth Woolridge and Boyd Dreyer. Things didn't quite go according to plan for former champion Chris Visser and Atlas Copco man Philip Herselman, who could only manage the 5th fastest time in Class T. In Class S for the Buckies with engines smaller than 4 litres, championship leader Jannie Visser and son Chris Visser Jr. did what they do best, and that is to set the pace in their aging Toyota. So here's confirmation of the Horn brothers' dominant qualifying performance at the Atlas Copco Gold 400. They beat title rivals Woolridge by nearly a minute, who in turn managed to clip teammate Henk Ladekan. Mark Corbett was 4th fastest and the first of the FIA cars, followed by Gareth Woolridge's Ford and the Navara, driven by Luke Berta. Jannie Visser was the first Class S car across the line and 7th fastest, ahead of Janelle de Villiers, David Huddy and Archie Rutherford, who rounded out the top 10 in the production car category. After all of that, and we are only halfway through the qualifying action, as all the special vehicles still had to make their mark. We've already heard from title rivals Evan Hutchison and Marius Marie, but behind them, there was another story developing. The 4x4 Mega World team of father Kutsia and daughter Sandra Labuskakny had a different look about them. Kutsia had to sit this one out, which meant that Sandra became the first ever lady driver to pilot a Class A special vehicle in a national event.
I think it's a great privilege for me. I think we grew up with racing, so we come from a very strong racing background in our family and that. So for me to drive is really a great privilege.
Sandra's debut as a driver was quite a story, but the little issue of crowning a champion still had to be sorted. Keith McEnety and Ferdy Peterser took a 4th place finish, about 40 seconds slower than title hopefuls Marius and Yolinda Fourie, who set the 3rd fastest time. This meant that defending champions Evan Hutchison and Donnie Stassen in the King Price Bat had the initial advantage over their rivals, the Fouries. But pole position on the special vehicle category went to the Live Lesotho crew of Stefan van Pletsen and Jaco Pieterse. Behind the Class A specials in Class P, it was Werner Kennedy and Tinus Venter who claimed another pole position for the Live Lesotho squad. But the gap to second places John Telford and Victor Nsheki was less than half a minute. Here are the results of qualifying for the special vehicle field. Stefan van Pletsen won qualifying, but as far as the overall championship was concerned, it was Evan Hutchison who took round 1 against Marius Fourie. And over in Class P, Werner Kennedy took pole position ahead of John Telford and Guy Henley in 3rd. So that was how qualifying turned out, and with the first bit of formalities done and dusted, it was time to focus on the main race of the Atlas Copco Gold 400, the race that would determine the outcome of a number of championship titles. Join us after the break as we find out who claimed the respective championship crowns for 2017.
This is Engenuity. From small and cheap to elegant muscle to enviable overkill, the Geneva Motor Show has it all.
Today we look at a world premiere in Ingolstadt. Audi introduces the new A7. Visionary vehicle technology from ZF. And the new Stinger from Kia.
Welcome back to Glen Harvey, the scene of the Atlas Copco Gold 400. This was the last day of the entire season, and what a day it turned out to be. Somehow, a very cold front managed to drop the October temperature down below 10 degrees. And although people reached for jackets and jerseys to brave the cold, the action on the rough and rocky route proved to be as hot as always. At 8:30 in the AM on the Saturday morning, it was time to drop the hammer and take on the final 360-odd kilometers of 2017. Let's start with the special vehicle category. Remember that the overall championship war was between the King Price Extreme Bat of multiple champions, Evan Hutchison and Donnie Stassen, and the Bat of farmers, Marius and Yolinda Fourie. It was pretty much a case of whoever beats the other will become champions. With that scrap raging, the Live Lesotho crew of Stefan van Pletsen and Jaco Pieterse grabbed the opportunity with both hands to end their season on a high, as the pair in their aging Chenoweth opened up a decent lead on the first of 2 loops that made up the race. Behind the leading trio, Naheem Masaji and Ryan Bodania made up ground and sliced their way through the field from behind the wheel of the striker. And what a drive from lady driver Sandra Labuskachny, who took over driving duties from her father in the big 4x4 Mega World Porter. At the rate she was going, Father Kutsia Labuskachny may not get his seat back once he recovers from his surgery. We'll tell you how that all panned out in a moment. But let's first have a look at the ones who didn't reach the finish. The tough route most certainly took its toll, with a number of Class FIA cars all falling by the wayside. This list included the Bat of Keith McEnety and Ferdy Peterse, the Jimco of younger Tyler Masaji and Laez Bodania, as well as the Zarco Magnum of John Thompson and Maurice Zamatin. Werner Kennedy and Tinus Venter were fierce competitors throughout the season, but the Live Lesotho squad had some bad luck, which also interfered with their final race. A broken gearbox removed them from the Class P action. The Class P championship was still up for grabs, and going into the event, only 4 points separated leaders John Telford and Victor Nsheki from the ever-consistent Nick Gosler and Andrew Massey. Unfortunately though, the title was decided within the first 50 kilometers of the race when Goslar's Magnum broke a side shaft. Telford on the other hand barely made it to the finish, but he did enough to claim the title. Telford and Nsheki may have won the overall war in Class P, but it was Guy Hanley with the experienced Jean Moore in the co-driver's seat who romped away with the Class P victory on the day in their Century Racing CR2, their first outing of the year and straight onto the winner's podium. But back to the action at the front of the field and the answer that everyone was looking for. Who will be crowned 2017 Special Vehicle Champions? Hutchison is one tough competitor, but the defending champion received a blow early on when the King Price Extreme Bat broke a control arm on the first lap. His crew did what they could to get him back out for loop number 2, but a few kilometers later, the Bat was seen parked in a field. Hutchie out.
But ironically enough, we've ended up with an engine problem. We've lost oil pressure and pretty much blown the motor. So rather than damage or trying to get it home, we know that our chances of the championship are gone anyway.
With Hutchie and Stassen relegated to the sidelines, the husband and wife team of Marius and Yolanda Fourie could afford to cruise to the finish in their Bat and make history by claiming their first ever overall national special vehicle title. A near-perfect season that was rewarded with the ultimate prize. While the Fouries won the overall war, it was Van Pletsen and Pieterse who put their heads down to finish the season just like they started, with a flag-to-flag victory in the Live Lesotho Chenoweth. Third step of the podium was enough to see the Fouries crowned as champions, while second was a career best for Naim Mosaji and Ryan Baranya, and it was Van Pletsen and Pieterse on the top step.
Yeah, I must say it's quite awesome because we won the first one and we had to finish the year on a high, so I think that's a good result for us.
Confirmation then of Van Pletsen's victory, Mosaji's second place, and the Fouries who were third across the line ahead of Sandra Labuschagne. In Class P, it was Henley that took the final win of the season, but the title went to John Telford and Victor Nsheki. That was how things panned out in the special vehicle category, so let's move our attention to the race for production vehicles, where either the Horn brothers from Malalan Toyota or Lance Woolridge and Ward Huxtable for the Ford NWM Puma Lubricants Ranger Squad still had a chance to be crowned Class T champions. Horn basically just had to finish the race and was on course to do so, whilst Woolridge kept his head down and hoped for the best. Behind the title fight, the rough and rocky route claimed a number of high-profile victims. Atlas Copco's Chris Visser and Phil Herselman had a rough day at their home event.
Started this morning and full of confidence, and unfortunately, a kilometer down the line, we had clutch problems. The clutch failed.
And they weren't the only ones. Class FIA pole sitters Mark Corbett and Rodney Burke lost a wheel on their FIA buggy, while Ford NWM Puma Lubricants young guns Gareth Woolridge and Boyd Dreyer suffered the same fate, while the Ford Ranger of Jacques Van Tonder and Mariska Luvner also failed to reach the finish. And although the Class S Hilux of Jannie Visser and son Chris Visser Jr. also failed to reach the end, they did enough throughout the season to clinch the Class S title. Yet another trophy in the already full cabinet of the man from Barbaspan. With Visser not on the podium here in Glen Harvey, the pairing of David Huddy and Gerard Skitter grabbed the opportunity with both hands to claim yet another Class S podium in their Miss Navara. But no one was as happy to reach the finish as Archie Rutherford, with son Kent reading the notes inside their Hilux.
That's good. Kent's been coming to the races since he was 6 weeks old. So he knows all the drivers, all the navigators, all the cars, so he's been dying to get in the car.
His son Kent is just 15 years old, and his mates at school have no idea what he does on his weekends.
Well, I told them that I do off-road racing, but it's quite difficult because they don't understand what it is. So I have to show them photos and stuff.
A win could perhaps be in the young man's future. But for now, the Class S honours belong to young Richard Leek and co-driver Henry Kerner in their Ford Ranger. Leek had narrowly missed out on winning the SA Rally Championship the weekend before, but drove to a well-earned Class S victory to end his season on a high.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's been quite a tough season for us in off-road. We've struggled quite a bit with reliability of the vehicle, but yeah, it's nice to end off on a high.
In the FIA class for Dakar Spec racing cars, the Dubai-based pairing of Thomas Bell and Patrick McMorrin were delighted to reach the finish in their Redline Motorsport Nissan Navara, and so were teammates Shamir Variawa and Zahir Baranya, who recovered well to finish fourth in class after their problems during the qualifying race. Ahead of them, the Renault Duster, piloted by the ever-consistent Johan van Staden and Mike Lawrenson, were the third Class FIA vehicle across the line. They were well beaten by Luke Burt and Andre Vermeulen, who drove an excellent race in their Redline Motorsport Nissan Navara. Burt was on course to record his best ever finish, but lost a little time near the end. Still, was good enough for 5th overall and a 2nd in Class FIA. As always, Class T provided the bulk of the thrills and spills, and the Atlas Copco Gold 400 was no different. Young Dylan Venter and Jaco van Aert endured a tough maiden race in their 4x4 Mega World Hilux, but showed good character to make it to the finish, as did brother and outgoing Class T champions Jason Venter and Vince van Alleman, despite getting lost and then doing nearly 200 kilometers without any brakes. The Team Pirelli Liquimoli Ranger of Brian Baragwanath and Cabello Lajuaba also survived the route to record a 5th place finish in Class T. But what about the championship fight between the Horn brothers and arch rivals, Woolridge and Huxtable? Woolridge did exactly what he had to do as he steered his Ford NWM Puma Lubricants Ranger clear of trouble and straight onto the 3rd step of the Class T podium. But it wasn't enough. They needed the Horns to finish outside the top 10, but the wily two brothers, Johan and Werner, would have none of it. The Malalan Toyota crew drove a superb race to beat Woolridge, albeit by a slender 2 seconds, and that after 400 kilometers of racing. More importantly for the Horns, it was enough to take the coveted Class T title.
We've got a championship now. After 10 years of racing, we finally got it. So yeah, we're happy.
So the two title contenders, Horn and Woolridge, finished 2nd and 3rd in Class T, which meant that someone else claimed the race victory. That someone else was none other than Henk Ladergan and Barry White. It was the pairing's maiden year in Class T cross-country racing, but the youngster showed his pace by claiming an emphatic victory on the final round of the season.
I think at the end of the season, after all the trouble we've had, I think it's a really great feeling being on the top 7.
Ladergan's Class T win was also good enough for 2nd overall, which meant that Toyota Gazoo Racing SA's Janelle de Villiers and German co-driver Dirk von Zietswitz carved their way through the field to claim yet another victory, rounding off a great year for Toyota, who enjoyed a clean sweep of the production vehicle championships. De Villiers started the day way down the order following a less than successful qualifying race, but the Dakar ace showed his class by adding yet another victory to his long list of motorsport achievements. Proof of de Villiers' masterclass at the top of the scoreboard, a fine victory by Ladergan in Class T, while 2nd was good enough for the Horns to wrap up the title. In Class S, it was Richard Leek who took the top honours at the final time of asking. And that's it, not only from the Atlas Copco Gold 400, but from the entire 2017 South African Cross Country Championship Series. And what a season it's been! Here's SACCS President Archie Rutherford reflecting on the past year.
Well, it's been a very successful season once again, largely due to the fact that our stakeholders have remained loyal to us, specifically Toyota. Toyota's been part of the series for years and they've continued to be part of the series thanks to their loyal support. And then Total have come on board this year. They have a new series sponsor. They've been fantastic and they've renewed for next year, so we're looking forward to a great year with Total next year. And Ford, as always, have been a stalwart in the series, and they've once again had a great season with us. So we look forward to a great season next year.
All this spectacular, dry and dusty action from the 2017 Atlas Copco Gold 400 was brought to you by Toyota, Ford and Total Exilium.